our democracy is under attack. Individuals who are currently sitting in jail pre-trial, have not been convicted of anything, do not have access to a fundamental right that they have, which is access to vote, access to the ballot, education about their voting rights. We are here today in support of a very important measure, House Bill 568. And this bill is led by Delegate Nick Mosby, and in the Senate, Senator Chris West. What we are demanding is that the Department of Corrections provide each individual released from correctional facilities with a voter application. We are demanding that the Department of Corrections inform individuals that their voting rights have been restored. We are demanding that the Department of Corrections post notices online and in probation offices stating that an individual who is no longer incarcerated on a felony conviction has the right to vote. We're also demanding that the State Board of Elections, whose mission it is to make sure that all eligible voters have access to the ballot, we are demanding that they establish a program to inform eligible voters of upcoming elections and how the voters may exercise their right to vote, and then provide these individuals actual voting ballots. We are demanding that the Board of Elections disseminate information on eligible requirements for voter registration applications 30 days before registration deadlines, as well as instructions on the absentee ballot process.
If you're incarcerated, if you are waiting pretrial, if you are caught up in the criminal justice system, you should have the right to eat. You should have the right to humane conditions. You should have the right to medicine and health care. But more importantly, you should also have the right to represent yourself.
This is not about granting new rights. Right. This bill, this legislation, this moment is about protecting rights. And we've gathered to protect the rights of those who have the right to vote and are being denied the right to exercise their vote.
So are you aware of other states that allow people that's incarcerated before they get convicted to vote?
Yeah, so there's been a number of reforms that have been going on across the country to ensure that eligible voters can have access to the ballot. So Colorado and Arizona are two really good examples of that. Both of their secretaries of state just passed a rule that require local boards of elections to create and sort of write down election plans that will make sure that they have infrastructure in place to deliver ballots to eligible voters in jails. In Illinois, Cook County Jail Illinois just passed a law that put a polling location inside of Cook County Jail, which is one of the largest jails in the country. And so, yeah, there's a number of places, including the District of Columbia right next door, that are thinking of finding ways to get more information, more access to the ballot to incarcerated voters that states know will always be behind bars. This is a captive population of eligible voters that the state has an obligation to serve. If your local jail doesn't have a process in place to do voter registration, to facilitate absentee voting, they should. It's a constitutional obligation they have, and if they're not doing it, it's our jobs collectively to hold them accountable and make sure that they're doing it.
If you're not here today, then there's nothing you can do about influencing the delegates, or what can happen?
If you're not here today, you can contact your legislator, call them, email them, tell them to support this legislation, tell them to vote in favor of making sure that people have access to absentee ballots and voter registration forms. You can come down to Annapolis if you're able to and just walk around and talk to any legislator. It doesn't even have to be your own, and make sure they know about this issue and make sure they know it's important to them.
So I met you about 5 years ago when you were working around getting the franchise rights for ex-felons. Yes. That was 5 years ago. You're still at this work. Explain why your organization is working and supporting this bill now.
The biggest, when we started into this thing, we had a plan, okay, about enfranchising the into the system, getting ex-felons into the system. 40,000 Marylanders, okay? 10% of them voting could sway an election. Their voice could finally be heard in a very large way. But we weren't able to even begin working on the plan due to notification. You have to let people know that they can now vote. Thereby, registrations go up, participation goes up. Not necessarily for one candidate or the other, but it's very important that 40,000 people, or a great fraction thereof, their numbers and their voices who've never been heard before are now coming into the conversation.